So today I'm joined by Mr. Niall Hogan, owner of Ireland's only wrestling shop. This is going into his 17th year. Niall, how are you doing?
Doing good. How are you, Morris? Good to hear from you.
I'm not too bad. It's good to see you. Pity I haven't seen you in person lately, but
Sure.
good to see you nonetheless.
As long as we're keeping safe, there'll be plenty of time for that.
Yeah, plenty of time for partying when this is all said and done.
Absolutely.
So I suppose the first thing then is, how did you come up with the idea for the wrestling shop?
Well, I've always been a lifelong wrestling fan, and I was kind of working in a job at the time. Around 2003, I had the idea that I wanted to go working for myself. I'd been working for a company out in Ballyfermot, out in Park West, a manufacturing company, and it was absorbing a lot of my time. I had moved up into management position there. I was the operations manager at the time before I left, and it was like a 24/7 job. I could just never get away from the place. I had a lot of good ideas on how I wanted to move the place forward and stuff like that and all, and it didn't seem to stick with management. They were going through a cost cutting exercise. They didn't want to really invest and all that kind of thing. Um, and I just felt I had pushed it as far as I could push it there. And because it was absorbing such an amount of my time, I had started out. I had a young daughter, Lauren. She was like 3 at the time and stuff like that, and I wasn't like, she was growing up in front of my eyes, and I wasn't getting to spend the time with her, the quality time that I wanted. So I thought that if I went in and I had this idea of opening up a shop, and I wanted to work at something that I loved and I was passionate about, because what I said was that would give it the best chance of success. Because at least if you love what you're doing, at least you'll tolerate it even in times where the money doesn't match your ambition. So that's what I did. I had no idea. Opened up the wrestling shop. Went in and thought that I understood everything about business, but I was naive as hell. And lots of stuff jumped up and sort of bit me in the backside on the road to those first 6 to 12 months in the shop. But yeah, I think when it opened up first, it was received well, and it seemed to be a good time in wrestling as well. 2004, you know what I mean? You were coming off the back of like WrestleMania 20 and stuff like that and all, and like there was a bit of a buzz about wrestling again, and then of course the fan base here, they were sort of starved for merchandise for years and stuff like that. You'd only really get event T-shirts every time they toured or something. So to be able to physically walk into a shop and see like a Stone Cold Steve Austin T-shirt or a Rock T-shirt or figures or DVDs or all that kind of thing, it was kind of like the Disney store, but for wrestling fans, if you like,
And you're an officially licensed distributor of the WWE merchandise as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I originally contacted WWE. And they set it up. They put me in charge. They put me in touch, with their European director of merchandise and all that kind of stuff. And we went back and forward with the idea and stuff like that. And he had actually mentioned to me that WWE had thought about doing this. They did open one in New York, the World, that I had visited and stuff like that. And they had thought about doing it around London and Paris and big cities around Europe and stuff like that, but they held back on the idea at the time. So he gave me the green light to go ahead, and he set me up with all the contacts, and introduced me to the UK contact and stuff like that, who was going to be my main supplier and all that kind of stuff. And without their help, it wouldn't have really worked out really well, because you would have been lost, you know what I mean? Because obviously the starting point really is getting the product,
Every so often I throw up a post on Instagram, and we have people on our Instagram page that follow from the UK and America and stuff like that, and they're like, Jesus, a wrestling shop. Like, I think it's pretty rare. Like, is there any in England? There must be.
There was 2 in England, and there was one up in Belfast, I think, at one stage. There was one in the Metro Shopping Centre in Newcastle at one stage, and it closed down. And then there's one, I think there's one down in Portsmouth. When I'm talking shops now, I'm talking bricks and mortar walk-in type of shop, like a retail store. I think there's still one down in Portsmouth. I think it's run by Mark Sloan. He talks with me. We would talk on a regular basis about merchandise and stuff like that and all. But he's the only other person I know that has like a kind of a walk-in shop that would be like a retail shop for wrestling merchandise. He operates, I think it's a wrestlingstore.co.uk, I think it is. It used to be A Merchandise. And I think Mark himself, I think he's a former wrestler as well, or he could be a current wrestler still as well. So yeah, he runs that one, but I think it's only myself and himself. I think WWE, they've branched out a little bit with their Euro shop. I think they have one in Germany now as well, or something like that, or they had one in Germany. But again, it's not a bricks and mortar shop; it's only an online shop. So as far as
Yeah.
I know, in Europe, we're between myself and Mark, we're the only bricks and mortar shops that you walk into. The one in Newcastle is gone, and the one in Belfast is gone.
And in terms of appearances over the years in the shop, like you've had a lot of people come through the door. Any particular guests that stand out or days that stand out in there?
Yeah, I mean, like we've had great times in there, even with the local Irish wrestlers and stuff like that. We started out. I mean, part of the premise of starting out in the shop was that we would help the local indie scene and stuff like that. We helped to promote shows with NWA back in the beginning and IWW and stuff that we helped them out with postering and ticket sales and all that kind of stuff as much as we could, And I remember back in the early days when NWA crowned our first ever Irish champion. We had them into the shop for signings and stuff like that, and it was kind of strange. This thing had never happened before, and it was weird for them as well because they didn't think of themselves as that kind of way. You know what I mean? These are just guys who were wrestling and having a good time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then obviously we got Jericho in on the back of a Fozzy gig back in I think 2005. I think it was the first time they came over. They did the Voodoo Lounge. So the promoter of the gig basically offered me Jericho for a half a day in the shop if I sold the tickets and did some of the Fozzy merchandise and stuff like that. And we did that. We did it again. I think again in was it 2010 or 2012 or something like that. I think whenever they toured again. Anyway, we did it. Slightly different. I think they were doing the Tampa Bar Music Centre this time. It was under a different guise. I think Fozzy had blown up a bit and they'd become a bigger deal than let's say the Voodoo Lounge, if you like. But yeah, so we've had Jericho in twice. He was fantastic. We great times with him, some great stories and stuff like that. We had Bret Hart in. Who came in on the back of an AWR show. Joe from OTT, Joe Cabray, he had arranged that for me. And we sold a load of his books and we paid him through the book sales. Basically, we had Bret in. Absolute gentleman. Agent was a bit of an idiot, but he was a gentleman himself. Then on the back of some of those other tours that Joe did, we've had in Chris Masters. We had in Gangrel. Who else did we have? Anyone else in? James Storm came in on the back of a TNA show. Again, I think MCD or someone were promoting that show. And they asked us to poster up the shop and stuff like that and flyer it and do all that kind of stuff. And James Storm came in to promote the show on the day. Fabulous guy, great dude. Big dude, sneakily big dude. You wouldn't realise how big the guy is till you meet him. Like he's built big time. And that's kind of Rusev vein. He's a back you could sell advertising space on. Big guy, but an absolute gentleman. Was slagging me off because I provided like drinks and snacks and stuff like that, and he was gouging me out of it that I didn't provide him with any beer. So this is a guy who lives the actual gimmick, So we had him in. Then Al Snow was over. I think he was doing some work for PWU or one of the organisations up the north, and he came in through the south with a promoter, and he did a day in the shop. And we didn't get a huge attendance for it and stuff like that, but we had about 50, 60 people at it. And they all hung back and we sort of locked the shop for a half a day. And all the people, we just pushed back all the rails. All the people kind of sat on the floor and we had like an impromptu sort of Q&A with him. And he told us some great stories about Mick Foley and some of the stuff he got up to over the years. Crazy, crazy stuff. You know what I mean?
He seems like a cool dude, Al Snow.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's a very cool dude, but very protective, obviously, of his brand, and like they all are and stuff like that. But yeah, he was an absolute gentleman with us. We didn't have any problems with him at all, and he went above and beyond, considering the turnout was quite low, because I think it was a weekday as well, so it was awkward for people. But yeah, people came in afterwards and stuff like that, and he hung out as much as he could. He signed everything for everyone and just had a great time with them and stuff like that. It was good fun, And then, of course, we have all the friends. We've all the friends of the shop. I mean, Fergal, Finn Balor, he would drop in from time to time when he's home. Becky always kind of makes it her business to try and drop in when she can. Becky was a friend of the shop right nearly from the beginning, to be honest. So was Fergal, really.
Yeah, she went in there last Christmas, didn't she?
I think it was the Christmas before. It wasn't last Christmas.
Yeah.
But if she's available, she'll always drop by and say hello. You know what I mean? There's a kind of a connection there with us, really. You know what I mean? And then we always get the Irish lads coming in. Paddy Morrow, who'd be good friends with us, and LJ Cleary was in there before Christmas having a chat with him, and he's kind of he was a little bit down because of everything stalling just when he was about to reach that pinnacle and take off. And I told him, I said, just stick with it, it's there for you, it'll come around again. And he's very positive. He's really looking forward to the new year and getting back out there again. So, and it's amazing to see those guys develop, because like we've seen those guys come into me as kids buying John Cena shirts and stuff like that, and now to see them wrestling, and it was good chatting to them as well, because when they come in I always ask them, I say, are you still as passionate as a fan about wrestling as you are now as a worker? Because a lot of these guys go off and start working wrestling, and then they suddenly develop a hate for the business. They hate watching it as a fan because they critique it so much they can't enjoy it. But he said now he's still a big fan and he loves watching it and stuff like that. And I was delighted to hear that, because he was one of the guys who would have come into us in the early days just as a kid, and he loved wrestling, and we were chewing the fat just about pay-per-views and all that he loved and all, so it's good fun.
That trajectory that we're talking about there, that you were talking about of Irish wrestling, like it was really going up and up and up and up and up until this thing hit. Yeah. When it comes back, I was talking to Niall Fox about this a few weeks ago. Do you think it's going to be a slow burner, or do you think people will want to rush back to it?
I think probably what will happen is, I think it will take its time coming back, and I think Joe is a very clever and very shrewd businessman, and he understands that himself. And the worst thing about this is once we get back going again, it's what happens. Will another strain or another virus come along or something else happen again? So it would be prudent to take your time, maybe run a couple of the ringside shows that he runs and stuff like that and get a feel for it. And then after that, maybe launch into some of the bigger shows again, because people are going to be concerned. The vaccine is not for everyone, and that's fine. It's a personal choice. But until we have a large percentage of the population vaccinated, I wouldn't be they're clever guys. They know their business better than anyone, you know what I mean? So it's just a real suck and see, tested with a few smaller shows, I would say, and then build up that momentum again, you know what I mean? Because you don't really want to it's like if the GAA reopened to an All-Ireland day. You don't really want that. You want to build the attraction to it again. You want to build up these guys again, because yourself, it's out of sight, out of mind. And a lot of these guys that were at the pinnacle and stuff like that, people will have forgotten about that momentum. And then they've also been dealing with some of the stuff that's been going on in the business. A lot of the guys who were up at that top end of the business, they've sort of gone away now. And obviously, RIP, they lost, Ronan Small passed away there during, I think, one of the lockdowns and stuff like that. Tragic loss to the business. Absolute wonderful guy. Spoke to him on a number of occasions. Just a cool guy, you know what I mean? And you just never know what's around the corner,
He's an original from OTT anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, if you're going to put a compilation together of OTT and stuff like that, Ronan Small will feature heavily in a lot of the top matches that were there. I mean, many a night he entertained me in the Tivoli big time, and he was absolutely top notch. Yeah.
What's the strangest request you've got from a customer over the years?
God,
for merchandise or anything like that?
Yeah. God, I'm not sure. We do from time to time. We get a lot of customers coming in that solely collect diva merchandise or women's wrestling merchandise. You know what I mean? They don't bother with the lads at all. I had an order in there before Christmas from a chap, and he ordered 6 of the women's wrestling figures, no men's figures at all, which is, to me, would be kind of unusual, you know what I mean? It's just, but I mean, it's, I don't know. I mean, I suppose some people would say that every order you get for wrestling merchandise is strange enough, you know what I mean? Because us wrestling fans, we're a strange breed, you know what I mean? We're not like anyone else. We spent years following a sport that's kind of lied to us, you know what I mean? So it's kind of weird that way, you know? But I don't know. There'd often be sometimes we get a lot of requests in from customers who turn around and go, if we put up pictures that Becky was in the shop or something like that, they would contact us and say, oh, the next time Becky's in the shop, would you ring us and let us know?
Give us a text, yeah.
Yeah, like as if none of these drop-ins are planned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and even if they were, I'm not going to be ringing half of Dublin to say, hey, guess what? Becky's dropping in to say Happy Christmas at 2:30 today, or something like that. You know what I mean? That just doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Those visits are kind of a more personal level kind of stuff. I mean, even the time Edge dropped in with Beth Phoenix.
That was well, yeah.
I forgot about that one as well. We were literally working there on a Thursday evening, and the two of them just walked in the door. How's it going? You know what I mean? And they stayed for about 45 minutes, and we were chatting away, and I was literally talking more to Beth about family life and the kids and all that sort of stuff, and I was chatting to him about Vikings and stuff like that. We didn't really talk much about wrestling, to be honest, but it was mad. In the 45 minutes they were in the shop, not a single wrestling fan walked into the shop.
My God.
Which is crazy, you know, which is crazy. There was me and one other guy working there at the time, and we literally were chatting away to them for about 45 minutes, and then I said, well, listen, I got a picture with him. I said, thanks for dropping in, really appreciate it, because he used to go into a supplement shop and buy protein bars off a friend of mine in Dunleary, and my friend told him about our store. So he said if he was ever in Dublin City, he'd drop by and say hello, and he was true to his word. He was in there because I think Beth came over to celebrate, I think their wedding anniversary or something like that, so she was over for about 3 or 4 days, and they came into town to have drinks and stuff. I think he was tweeting at the time. They were down in Tampa Bar and all over the place, and they popped in and said hello, and like he couldn't believe it and all, and like he was asking where all his merch was, and I had all his latest shirts and all his retro shirts down the front of the shop, and I said, look, they're all over there. And 3 of the shirts, it was weird because he said to me 3 of the shirts he'd never even seen.
Jeez.
And I was taken aback by that, because I was thinking, well, do they not send you stuff to kind of approve and go, do you like this? Like, he goes, nah, they just blast stuff out there, and sure, we just get royalties or whatever it is, you know. But it was gas, because I would have thought, like, with his character and stuff like that, he'd have a little bit of control in there on his merchandise and want it a certain way. But no, he was real cool, real laid back, and she was absolutely a gem. She was lovely.
Speaking of merchandise, who do you think, since you've opened the shop, which superstar do you think you've sold the most merch for?
Well, sure, there's only 2 guys in the running there, really, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's John Cena, who is, you know, the savior of any retail store, and then there was CM Punk. I mean, they were the 2 big merch sellers, and since then Roman is pretty big, and he's even big now because we get the bump off him with the kids and stuff like that. But now that the adult fan base are starting to buy into him as well. Obviously, Undertaker would be fairly big. I mean, he's fairly, because he's been a huge seller for us in 2020. Obviously with the retirement and the Boneyard match and all that kind of stuff, and of course all the documentaries, and plus they've blasted out so much merch of his that, like, if you're a wrestling fan in 2020, if you've avoided buying an Undertaker shirt, you've done really, really well, because we must have had 20 different shirts in.
Did anyone ask you for the Snoop Dogg Undertaker merch?
They actually did, believe it or not. We had a number of people who wanted to order it. I was kind of thinking, I was really tempted to order it and maybe leave it packaged and put away, because that would be one of those kind of, like, you know, you look back in 10 years time and stuff like that. But then they pulled it as quick as they put it up. I think did he do something with AEW or something like that? Or
I think he's appearing there soon.
Something like that. He signed something with AEW, and they just went, that's not going to happen. And within 3 or 4 days, I think the merch vanished off the site. We had placed orders for some of it for customers, but obviously I don't know what the story is with those orders, or whether they're going to fulfill them or not. I don't even know if any of the merch even ever got printed or stuff like that, you know. Maybe Taker has a few bits lying around the house. But then I always thought it was kind of weird. I mean, why would you put the Undertaker with sort of, like, you know, this hip hop artist or stuff like that, you know? Never the two should meet, you know what I mean? Like, it's, I would have thought, like, if you're putting Undertaker with sort of, like, you know, Metallica or Slayer, or you know, or some hard sort of rock band or something like that, you know what I mean? It'd be like if you did a collaboration with Undertaker and Flow Rider. Like, it makes no sense, you know what I mean? And it didn't make any sense, so maybe it wasn't a bad thing that it got pulled in the end anyway, because it was kind of weird.
So you branched into MMA kind of stuff and Funko Pops and different things like that in the shop as well.
Yeah, we kind of started out, primarily when we opened up first, we started out with mainly wrestling, and the shop was nearly totally wrestling, but we recognized very quickly, with the cost of rents and everything else in there being so high and stuff like that, we didn't believe that wrestling would just sustain the shop on its own. So then we started doing the likes of sort of like American brands and stuff like that. So we sold an awful lot of Orange County Choppers and American Chopper merchandise because we found there was a synergy there between the wrestling audience and also the biker audience. They had similar sort of tastes. And then MMA came along and MMA exploded, and we started stocking MMA merchandise, and that was interesting because we had the time that the UFC came over first. I think it was Dan Henderson and Rich Franklin fought in the Old Point. I think it was. I don't think it was even the Tree Arena. Yeah. And Dana White strolled into the shop one evening. He came in like I was sitting there one evening, and 6 of these big UFC guys walked in. Security in these big UFC bubble jackets. I was going, what's going on here? What's with these guys now? And the next thing, Dana just strolled in. He had a pair of jeans on him, a t-shirt and a denim jacket. His girlfriend or his wife, whatever it was, she was shopping in Asha next door buying a few bits. And he came in, and funny enough, the Kurt Angle Shield interview was on the TV, and he was laughing at that, you know what I mean? And I said, you're not going to sign him. Come on, sign him. He says, I can't sign him, man. You know the score and all this, you know. But we had a good chat, and in fairness to Dana, he put me in touch with a lot of the brands at the time. At that time, Warrior Wear was very strong. Sprawl was very strong. They were using all the brands, and it was down to the fighters. It wasn't this sort of Reebok uniform deal that they have.
Yeah.
And he was brilliant. He put me in touch with a lot of brands. And we stocked like UFC branded merchandise, Tap Out, Sprawl, Warrior Wear, Hayabusa, you know, all those major MMA brands. And that was great for us. And then obviously the rise of McGregor was huge, you know what I mean? Because like people just bought into that guy straight away. And, you know, we were shifting tons of that stuff. Like they were doing a big viewing for one of his fights one time down in Harry's Bar.
Oh, yeah.
And his own gym couldn't get the D-Tron shirts. Remember they were doing the D-Tron shirts with the fighter guy? And I had to get some D-Tron shirts in for his gym, which was kind of weird. I was thinking he could just make a call and get a box load of these, but obviously not. But we had some on the water, so we looked after some of the people in the gym and stuff, made sure they would get it out with his gear and stuff like that. But yeah, then there was the rise of that, and then we started branching out. We started doing you know, a little bit of boxing and stuff like that. We signed a bit of a deal with Kronk in the UK, who are a branch affiliated to Kronk, obviously in Detroit, the big boxing gym.
Yeah.
And we've started selling some of the Kronk gear. You know, and we're going to try and develop more of that boxing side, obviously, as well. And then we're probably looking at we're probably going to go down the road, I'd say, in the next few months, pending on lockdowns of that. Probably do a bit of retro gear. So we're going to look at sort of, you know, retro stuff like, you know, Predator, Rambo, Karate Kid, Rocky, that type of thing, and maybe start stocking some of that retro stuff. There seems to be a big market now for retro stuff. People are getting more. I think with the lockdowns and with COVID, people are reflecting more on their life and what used to make them happy, and those are times that made them happy when they were younger, looking at these different movies. And that there seems to be there might be a market there for some of that retro merchandise stuff. So we're looking into that at the moment. But again, it will depend how lockdowns go and what happens after that, and obviously the treatment from landlords and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Because obviously at the moment they want to get paid, and obviously we're in a position where we're sitting at home and we have to meet somewhere in the middle and stuff like that, you know what I mean? But that should be fine. They've been supportive of us so far, and hopefully that won't change.
If it's like the football anyway, the retro gear will definitely be making a comeback. That's
that
market as well.
Yeah, and we've dabbled a little bit in some of the football stuff as well. We got in some football T-shirts and stuff like that, and obviously we do face coverings for football, wrestling, NBA, NFL, anything really. We can do face coverings for and stuff like that. You know, same with our mugs and our accessories and stuff like that. You know, we can literally source anything really in that terms, that kind of thing. You know.
Speaking of football, you recently started a football podcast. Tell us about it, and the wrestling one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm now on board I've been on board for a while now as part of the Four Podmen. We used to record a couple of shows, myself and Ian Kelly, who's the OG of the Dynamo Podcast Network. We used to record four Podmen. Well, it wasn't Four Podmen, it was Dynamo's dozen at the time. And we used to do some wrestling ones from the show and stuff like that, myself and Carl. And it was really just three guys chewing the fat about, you know, what we liked in wrestling, picked a topic and we had a chat about it. You know, the likes of Hulk Hogan and Macho Man and stuff like that and all. And as we looked into it more, we sort of thought that like this required, you know, a bit of energy and stuff like that, and a bit of commitment and a bit of effort to become something bigger, you know. So we developed the 4 pod men, and there was 4 of us there on it, and some members have changed in and out from time to time. But the core of it there is myself and Ian, and Ian hosts the show obviously, and it's myself there and Jason Kennedy, and now Joe Duignan is on board. He's the beef. Joe has a history. Joe was an NWA wrestler, one of the OGs as well, and himself and Ian, I think, had their first match together back in the day,
cool.
probably 2002 or something like that, I'd imagine. And but Joe has a good knowledge of wrestling and stuff like that, and he's anxious to keep on going with it and stuff like that. You know, he's really on board, and he's dying to get his fingers into it, if you like. And the podcast is really good fun, and then we're also doing, then we started the football one, which is the upper tier when you've been on it yourself. And no doubt be on it again. That's myself and Peter Hart and Ian Kelly. Peter's on Peter Hart Graphics. He does all our graphics and logos, and he does his own show as well, the Superior Comic Show on the network as well. And that's going really, really well. We're just having fun. We're chatting about football, coming from it from different angles, trying to see it from different fans' points of view. We're going to develop that even further. I'm looking at doing specialised shows with bringing on refs to talk about VAR. We're going to be looking, obviously, the transfer window this month and stuff like that and all. And it's been great for me because, obviously with me being locked down, I'm used to going to town every day and I'm working in the shop and stuff like that. And now I'm sitting here in the house. So, I have nothing but time on my hands to think and, develop, go into podcasting and stuff like that and use my time, more beneficial. So from my point of view, it's been brilliant. I do a lot of work on the podcast, as you know yourself. There's a lot of work involved in them. It's not just like 2 lads jumping on or 4 lads jumping on having a chat. We pick a topic and we research, and you can see from the feedback there that people know that when we're talking about it, although there's 4 lads on the 4 pod men, we attack a topic the way we want to, and we come from very different angles on it and bring different perspectives, because we've all started watching wrestling at a different time and we all have a different idea of wrestling, because obviously I've never wrestled. I'm only a wrestling fan, but I've been watching it since the 80s. Jay is just a little bit behind me in terms of, say, Jay is probably late 80s or early, he's probably 90s. And then obviously with Ian and Joe, they've wrestled before, so they bring that kind of concept to it as well, that they have that in-ring experience of knowing from the inner side of the business. So it's a cool dynamic that we have going on there. And it's just, hopefully it'll grow from strength to strength. But yeah, certainly that would be, the network would be something that we're going to be developing a lot in 2021, bringing on a lot more new shows. We did our first episode today with Ted Irvin, and it was that retrotainment podcast that's starting. I think the first episode will be up tomorrow night. We did a review of Karate Kid 1.
Okay.
And he's going to pick a topic every week, or a movie, I should say, or a TV show, and someone's going to come on and review that with him and stuff like that, and just take a look back in time. But today's one was really cool. It was really good fun, and it was interesting, the dynamic between myself and Ted as well. So it was good.
Very good. In terms of the future, then, you've touched on the podcasts.
Yeah.
In terms of the future for the shop, then, you touched on it a little bit earlier. You're going to kind of branch out to a few new things as well in there.
Yeah, I think it's like everything. It has to evolve. You know what I mean? It's you can't have a shop that's just stuck in the Attitude Era selling Austin 316 shirts and Now You're All Rock shirts. Everything evolves over time. We've such a customer base. Like, our customer base is anything from 5 to 50. You know what I mean? So we have to kind of try and facilitate everyone and bring in a little bit of everything. We have ECW fans that come in. We've New Japan fans, AEW fans, ROH. We were the first. Funny enough, when we say that, like, if you look at Ring of Honor, we were the first shop and the first supplier of Ring of Honor merchandise in Europe. We introduced Ring of Honor to the European market in terms of merchandise, shirts and DVDs and stuff like that. No one else was really stocking them before us. But yeah, so we try and facilitate, and obviously people give us feedback and stuff like that as well. And, we try and take that on board as best we can and try and deliver. And we try and throw in a sprinkling of memorabilia there as well. So we like to stock a lot of signed product and, belts and urns and all that kind of cool stuff, plaques and, just to give it a good feel that when you do walk in, it's not necessarily Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, but it's not necessarily Stone Cold and The Rock, and it's not necessarily Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage. So it's a bit of everything. So people really enjoy their visits to the shop, and a lot of time as well when they visit the shop as well, it's not necessarily a financial transaction. There's a lot of people drop into the shop, they just want to have a chat, they want to banter about wrestling. Sometimes they come in and they just start bantering with each other, obviously not during COVID times, but during normal times, the shop is kind of a hub where people come in, and it's like as if they nearly feel safe talking about wrestling because they've no one to talk about it. Like we would have a lot of parents would come in with kids that maybe have special needs or are challenged, and we would they turn around and they always message us after the fact going, you made that child's day today. He had a great time, because we always make a big deal of it. We get the belts down off the wall and we get them taking pictures, and we're chatting to them about wrestling, and we always try and engage with them, because sometimes they might have social challenges. So it's not easy for them to engage, but if you start talking to them about wrestling, they open up to you and they're talking to you about wrestling, having to chat. And more often than not, they have parents who haven't got a clue about wrestling or don't really take an interest in it. They wouldn't know who John Cena was from Seth Rollins. But when they come into us, like, they'd be chatting to me about John Cena and Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns and Becky Lynch and all that kind of thing. And you can understand with them at a level that they understand and appreciate. And we get loads of messages from parents coming back afterwards going, you really made a special day there for them and stuff like that. And like, it's no effort to us at all. Like, you know what I mean? We love talking about wrestling. You know what I mean? That's the business that we're in, So it's very heartwarming and fulfilling from that point of view. I always love this time of year as well, because I get up on Christmas morning and my kids are obviously opening their own presents and stuff like that, and they're excited about that. But I always sit back and I always take a moment to think about hundreds of kids around the country, and they're opening up their presents this morning. And like, we played a part in that. And that's very rewarding. Not even taking into account the financial aspect, but the fact that we make that kind of thing happen, it's great.
Well, here's to the next 17 years, and thanks a million for joining us today.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thanks for having me on, and sure, pleasure as always.
Cheers, man.
Thanks, bud.